Empty everything she's got for inspection. The base gate was crowded. A group of guards tore open the backpack of a woman standing silently. She didn't resist. A wrapped object fell out. A black cloth with a symbol of a snake coiled around a silver star. A sergeant nearby suddenly shouted, "Step back, nobody touches her!" Her name was Mara Beck, 33 years old, European, long blonde hair, old shirt, faded canvas pants, carrying a dusty road backpack. She stood silently at the gate of Fort Clearstone Base, requesting to meet any officer who served in the Western Theater in 2013. The guards couldn't find her name in the system. "You're a civilian. No business here, no entry." She spoke softly. "I'm carrying something that needs to be delivered personally, related to a lost unit." They laughed. "Everyone's got a story, but if you don't have papers, we search your stuff." They dumped her backpack, dried food, a notebook, an old map, a torn water bag. A young soldier picked up the map, laughing. "Western Theater? 10 years ago? Are you delusional?" She remained silent. The guards grew more aggressive with each item they pulled out. Personal hygiene items were examined with exaggerated disgust. Her worn clothing was mocked. "Look at this," one guard said, holding up her torn jacket. "Probably picked this up from a dumpster." Another guard found a small pouch of medication. "What's this? Trying to smuggle drugs into a military base?" Mara spoke quietly. "Painkillers. For an old injury." "What injury?" "From falling off your couch." The mockery continued. They treated her like a vagrant, a delusional woman with fantasies of military service. Her quiet dignity only seemed to make them more contemptuous. "Ma'am," the head guard said with fake politeness, "we get people like you every week, claiming to be veterans, claiming to have served. Most of them are just looking for handouts." Mara's eyes remained fixed on the horizon beyond the gate. "I'm not looking for anything. I'm trying to return something." "Return what? Your imaginary service record?" The guards exchanged glances, their amusement growing crueler. They'd seen this before, or thought they had. Disturbed civilians seeking attention, claiming military connections they never had. But they hadn't noticed something important. While they laughed and joked, Mara's hands remained perfectly still. No trembling, no nervous fidgeting. Her breathing was controlled, measured. These weren't the mannerisms of someone seeking attention. These were the habits of someone who'd learned to stay calm under pressure. Real pressure. CTA Comment Act 1. Have you ever seen a good person treated badly? Type, truly unfair. When they opened the final pouch, a neatly folded black cloth fell out. On it was a black snake wrapped around a silver bullet, the Black Viper Special Forces symbol. A sergeant nearby, Sergeant Dunley, was checking the duty roster. Seeing the symbol, he jerked back, stepped away, his eyes tense. He shouted, "Step back immediately, nobody touches this item." Everyone froze. Dunley approached Mara, speaking quietly. "Were you with Viper 3? She nodded. He whispered, "Viper 3 was declared missing in action in 2013. Entire unit, no survivors. Your name is on the KIA list." She opened the notebook. Inside were a list of 6 people with badges, blood types, locations of sacrifice. The final page had a handwritten line. "Last Promise Keeper, MB." Dunley slowly whispered, "You brought them home the way no one else dared." The atmosphere at the gate had completely changed. The guards who'd been laughing moments before now stood at attention, uncertain but sensing something far beyond their understanding. Sergeant Dunley had been in the military for 15 years. He'd seen the classified reports, knew the stories that were never told publicly. Black Viper units were the military's most elite special forces, the ones sent when conventional units couldn't handle the mission, and they had a 90% casualty rate. "Ma'am," Dunley said, his voice now carrying the respect of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. "How long have you been carrying this?" 10 years, 4 months, 16 days, Mara replied without hesitation. The precision of her answer sent chills through everyone present. This wasn't someone making up stories. This was someone who'd been counting every single day. The Western Theater operation, Dunley continued. That was classified level black. Officially, it never happened. Officially, Mara said, we were never there. She opened the notebook to a page showing coordinates, dates, and detailed tactical notes. The handwriting was precise, methodical, the kind of record-keeping that only came from real combat experience. 6 went in, she said quietly. 5 came out in pieces. 1 came out carrying them. Dunley examined the notebook more closely. The entries were written in military shorthand, using terminology and abbreviations that only someone with actual special forces training would know. Ma'am, why didn't you report back to command? Why didn't you make contact? Mara's expression didn't change. I tried. For 2 years, I tried. Every letter returned unopened. Every call went unanswered. The operation was classified. The unit was disbanded, and officially, none of us existed. But you kept trying. I kept my promise. The guards stood in uncomfortable silence. They'd gone from mocking a delusional civilian to realizing they were in the presence of someone who'd served at the highest levels of military operations, someone who'd survived what others couldn't, someone who'd spent 10 years carrying the weight of promises made to the dying. CTA Comment Act 2. If you've ever misjudged someone, type, I was wrong. Dunley made an urgent report. A group of high-ranking officers arrived, including Lieutenant Colonel Ellis, who had commanded the 2013 operation. He looked at Mara, trembling slightly. Mara pulled out a photograph. A group of young soldiers, photographed next to a burning vehicle, with her in the background, dirty uniform, holding a map. Mara said, I survived 11 days in the red zone. Every person who sacrificed, I packed their belongings. But no one answered my letters. No one came to receive them home. Lieutenant Colonel Ellis bowed his head. He said, I thought the unit had been erased. Emergency withdrawal orders. I never knew anyone made it back. Mara placed on the table the cloth containing unit symbols, name tags, and the final message from the commanding officer. She said, I don't need identity restoration. I just need someone to put their names on the memorial wall. The entire room stood still. Lieutenant Colonel Ellis raised his hand to salute her. Officially, Mara returned the salute. For the first time, she said nothing more, but Lieutenant Colonel Ellis wasn't finished. The weight of 10 years of unknowing had hit him like a physical blow. Mara, he said, his voice breaking slightly, I need you to know something. The intelligence for that operation was compromised. We sent you into a trap. She nodded. We knew. About 4 hours in, we knew. Then why didn't you abort? Because, she said simply, there were civilians in that compound, 12 families, children. The room grew even quieter. Ellis closed his eyes, remembering the mission briefing that had mentioned possible civilian presence, but prioritized the strategic objective. Did you? He couldn't finish the question. We got them out, all of them. That's why it took 11 days instead of 3. Ellis sat down heavily. The operation had been classified as a partial success based on the strategic objective being achieved. No one knew about the civilian rescue because officially there were no civilians to rescue. The families, Ellis asked, where are they now? Safe. In refugee camps, then resettled. I kept track for the first few years. Mara paused. Some of the children are adults now. They have families of their own. She opened the notebook to a different section, showing addresses, photos, and letters. Letters of gratitude from people who had no idea their rescuers were officially dead. This is why I couldn't let it go, she said. Not just for my unit, but for the people they died saving. Someone needed to remember that their sacrifice meant something. Ellis looked through the notebook, seeing decade-old photos of children who'd grown up, families who'd rebuilt their lives, people who'd survived because 6 soldiers had chosen to stay and fight instead of following orders to withdraw. Mara, he said finally, I owe you an apology. We all do. The system failed you, failed your unit, failed the mission. "The system didn't fail," she replied. "The system worked exactly as designed. Operations like ours aren't meant to be remembered. But people like you are." For the first time since arriving at the base, Mara smiled. It was sad, but genuine. "I'm not looking for recognition, sir. I'm looking for closure, for them, and for the families who never knew their names." Ellis nodded. "You'll have it. I'll make sure of it. And, sir, there's one more thing." She pulled out a final photograph from the notebook. It showed her unit before the mission, young and confident, not knowing what they were walking into. "I need you to know they were good soldiers, the best. They followed every order, showed courage under fire, and died protecting people they'd never met. That's what should be remembered." CTA Comment Act 3. If you've ever owed someone recognition, write, "I owe a debt." 1 week later, Mara disappeared from the base. She left no name, took no confirmation papers. But at the base gate, a small wooden plaque was erected with the inscription, "For the last promise keeper, Black Viper 3. No need for salutes. Just don't be forgotten." In the administration office, a young officer placed copies of the 6 names from the notebook on the official memorial wall. No banners, no trumpets, no posthumous award ceremony, just silence. And a very large question: how many people like Mara are still walking among us? But the story didn't end there. Word spread quietly through the military network. Other veterans, other families, other survivors of operations that never happened began to emerge. Within 6 months, Sergeant Dunley had received 17 similar visits. People carrying memories, carrying names, carrying promises they'd made to the dying. The military quietly established a new protocol, the Mara Beck Protocol, a confidential system for handling veterans from classified operations who needed to honor their fallen comrades. Lieutenant Colonel Ellis, now promoted to full colonel, made it his personal mission to ensure that no other promise keeper would wait 10 years to be heard. The small plaque at Fort Clearstone became a pilgrimage site, not for tourists, but for military personnel who understood what it represented. People would stand there silently, some saluting, others just reading the inscription. A local journalist tried to write a story about the mysterious woman who'd appeared at the gate. The military couldn't comment on classified operations, but they could confirm that the memorial wall had been updated with 6 new names. When the journalist asked why the names were added, Colonel Ellis simply said, "Because someone kept their promise." The notebook Mara left behind became part of the base's historical collection, not for public display, but for training purposes. Young officers were shown the precision of her record-keeping, the dedication of her mission, the cost of promises made in wartime. And somewhere, in a quiet civilian life, Mara Beck continued her work. Because promise keepers don't retire, they just find new promises to keep. The families she'd saved sent Christmas cards to the unknown soldier care of Fort Clearstone. The military made sure someone read them aloud at the memorial wall every year. Some promises once made are never broken. CTA Comment Act 4. Type, "I will live kindly." If you believe the person who stays silent longest usually carries the most. Mara carried no rank. She demanded no glory. She only carried 6 names and memories that no one else wanted to claim. Society sometimes only salutes people wearing the right colored uniform, but it forgets that those who emerge from the wreckage are the ones who truly understand the meaning of survival. She didn't need anyone to believe her. She only needed those who had fallen to be called by name once more. Be kind. Look carefully. Because maybe the person being searched at the gate today is someone who once saved an entire unit whose name you've never heard. The real heroes aren't the ones who come home to parades and medals. The real heroes are the ones who come home carrying the weight of those who didn't. They're the ones who spend years, decades, making sure their friends' sacrifices aren't forgotten. They don't ask for recognition. They don't seek attention. They just ask that the names be remembered. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get the chance to listen when they finally speak. Remember, the person you're ignoring today might be the one who saved lives you'll never know about. Treat everyone with the respect they might deserve, because you never know who's been carrying promises you can't imagine.